1, 2, 3,
4. Four.
Them niggas shrink around you, man. You know what I'm saying? They just in the space probably before you was a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But them niggas shrink when you come around. That's why them niggas don't want you around.
Situation with the genders and all of that shit that we've been hearing about. And there's nobody better than the gore. Philosophical to come set that bitch off.
Yo, you know the game been.
What's going on? What's going on? Peace and love, everybody. We back again. This is definitely, I already know, gonna be one of my favorite episodes because it's definitely one of my favorite people. But I learned a lot from this man. This brother definitely opened my eyes to a lot of different things that were actually sitting in front of me the whole time. And being in the space that we're in, I feel like there's so much confusion. There's so many different perspectives about who we are as a people, who we are as genders, and what's the problem in relationships and identity and economics and culture and how all these things coalesce. But I think a lot of times we're trying to reinvent the wheel when we really haven't analyzed and recognized what actually happened. You know, a lot of people have known that a lot of conversation I've had in this space, you know, been a lot of resistance to scholarship and certain ideas. And, you know, anytime you show some type of interest in your culture outside of just the norm, everyday identity, you know, you're just a super black person or you're a hotep, you know, all these different words they use to describe and categorize people who just basically have an understanding and a yearning for knowledge and understanding who they are and where they come from. And I feel like a lot of times there's information here that we haven't really assessed fully before we can just come and try to create new identities. A lot of people that have new terms of what to call us. And I feel like we haven't really discovered what we've already been called, you know? So I think the person I'm bringing on, this brother, is one of the foremost experts on this topic. Because, you know, you guys know me, I'm a big history person. And I like to bring scholarship and I like to bring other perspectives outside of mine. You know, I definitely don't want an echo chamber, but I definitely want people who have actually put some thought into these things, not just give their opinions, but have actually put in time and humbled themselves to learn things, because it takes humility to learn. It's very easy to just tell people what to do and just tell people how you feel, but to really sit down and really learn something and really grasp a concept that's not just put out there, it takes time and it takes humility. So I respect people who've taken on that path. And like I said, this brother is one that is at the top of that list. So without no further ado, I would like to introduce to you Brother Aseer, the Duke of Tears. Welcome to the show, brother.
Peace, brother. Thanks for having me on.
No doubt. Yes. So yes, this is a long time coming for me. It's crazy because my mother met the man before I was even able to meet the man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so it was just crazy how things worked out. But that's how bad. That's how much I wanted to connect with you. I just wanted, you know, I'm like, Mom, let's just go see him speak. You know, unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but I just wanted somebody to support you from the family. And
word, honestly, your mom's, man, that was really dope.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Are you still doing like shows out of town? You still do like appearances, things like that?
Yeah, lectures and you know, symposiums and, you know, talks, community centers. Yeah, I still do that. I got one coming up in Atlanta, I believe, on the 11th.
Oh, good. I'm close to Atlanta now because I was in Jersey before, but I'm in Charlotte now.
Okay,
so
yeah.
Be in touch. I would
big up to all the Moors in Charlotte.
Yeah, 3-hour drive, brother.
It's
So first, I would like to ask you what is your background? How did you get into this train of thought? What was your original interest as a young man? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this train of thought.
I came up in Brooklyn, of course. Big up to Brooklyn. And my family, my mother, my father, well, my mother's side of the family, they come up from New York back in the days, from that whole wave of people from the South that moved up to the North. And then that created the whole cycle where the people from the South moved up to the North, and then they would send the children down South during the summers, and vice versa. People in the South would then send their children up to the North, you know, who didn't go like that. So that went on for some years. And they were, my mother's side of the family, whatever, they were from the what they now call Louisiana type thing. So they were dealing with a lot of what they call Creole ancestry, Washita ancestry, Washoe ancestry, and on my father's side, they were more Moors from the north. So on my father's side, his mother and them, they were more from like what they would consider today like the Algonquin, Seneca, Wabanaki. That's all of the people that was up north. Today they call them Indians, but back in the days they were referred to as the barbarous nation. Barbarous come from Barbary. Barbary was another name for the Barbary powers or the Barbary states, which represented those descendants of the old Moorish Empire. So I grew up in basically like I would say a pretty conscious household. You know what I mean? My mother After my mother and my father split up, like everybody else, like I lived with her and I would see him, you know what I mean, when I could see him. And however, on both sides, they were very cultural. You know what I'm saying? So my father he played the drums. He was a writer. You know what I mean? He wrote for the Amsterdam News, um, and eventually got into the music industry. But analogous to that, he also was a radio DJ and was really into like literary aspects. So I got a lot of books and stuff from him, like the writings of Baldwin, Langston Hughes, like, like a lot of that typical so-called Black history stuff. Then on my mother's side, her best friend that she grew up with, who eventually became a surgeon, a doctor, she was a Black Panther. So, you know, through my mother's side, I got into a lot of the other stuff, the writings of like H. Rap Brown and, Huey and Michael Luther King, who they also referred to, whose real name, that was his real name, Michael Luther King, but everybody knows him as Martin Luther King. So all of that, like I remember her having the original Jet magazine from when he got killed. You know what I'm saying? So I had a lot of that type of stuff. So literary stuff was always good for me. And plus I was really into art. So I would take classes at the Brooklyn Museum, you know what I'm saying? And do like study like Japanese, calligraphy, as well as like they would take us into like the Egyptian section and I would like draw. They would make us draw like you know what I'm saying? This is when they were still putting money into education and art, and you know what I mean, before Reagan came in and shut down all of the after school and architectural, artistic and all of that stuff, funding for all of that. So, growing up into all of that, but then, you're still in the street. So you're still in the ghetto. So, of course, I'm also raising up at the same time hip hop is coming up. You know what I mean? So all of that was kind of like my introduction to consciousness, to, young manhood, art and history and stuff. So like everybody else, like I remember when Roots came on TV, you know what I'm saying? And they started inundating us with the whole, you were slaves from Africa type stuff, you know what I mean? And so I remember going through that phase of, the whole red, black, and green, you know what I mean? Like I watched this stuff happen when everybody was wearing like red, black, and green medallions, Malcolm X buttons, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that surface level consciousness that everybody was kind of like into. And then, hip hop then brought us people like KRS-One and Chuck D and these type of people. So in that, listening to their music, that opens you up to getting further into deeper stuff like El Haj Malik Shabazz L, aka Malcolm X, what his writing was, reading Message to the Black Man, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you just start elevating and getting more and more into that. The only problem is when you're looking at it from the perspective of the idea that somebody owns you, you see what I'm saying? It can also foster a victim mentality, and it can also foster a degree of anger that you can't really identify with, because nobody around me or anybody in my generation grew up as slaves. You know what I'm saying? Like by the time that I was born, we as so-called original people had been so-called emancipated since about 1865. And between 1865 and 1871, you know what I mean, you had a whole period where, a lot of what they call Reconstruction happened. And that Reconstruction is what led to a lot of the schisms and the problems we have in our community now when it comes to dealing with race, identity, gender, and these things. That's when all of that stuff got mixed up and literally reconstructed to get us to fall into the identities that they wanted us to fall into after the government had been taken over through what they call the Act of Congress in 1871. And what that did was it created an identity culture that, that people like that look like us, that's this color, had to be engendered into to take us away from what we already had prior to all of that happening. And so from, let's say, 1871 to, let's say, 1971, you get an entire generational identity of us now who were at the top of one point, now at the bottom, and now we're coming up, or now we're coming up in a whole different perspective. So my grandmother, my great grandmother, bless the dead, when I would talk to her about slavery and shit like that and coming from Africa and all that, she was like, that never happened. Like, you ain't never come from no boat, like, and from Africa and none of that. We was always here. You know what I'm saying? And she grew up on a so-called plantation. However, a lot of these things that we refer to, like when we think of plantation, we think of white people owning black people. Or, you know what I mean? We get these ideas based upon us growing up watching Roots, growing up watching 12 Years a Slave, growing up watching all of these different things that always have us at the end of a lash of somebody else. When most of those are stories and most of those are reenactments to things that didn't even happen like that. But we are forced to believe that they happen like that because a lot of people made a lot of money on that. You know what I mean? On making us believe that at a time when most so-called Europeans were physically and literally illiterate, meaning they couldn't read, write, add, couldn't do anything, that these people somehow were able to navigate ships and were able to put millions of people on boats with no toilets and no bathrooms, and that they could then ship them to another place they never been. You see what I'm saying? And then get there, and then with 3 ships wipe out 100 million people with a head cold. You know what I mean? With a cold. You know what I mean? And then use us, people that look like us, to then build up a whole country. But then it doesn't explain how somebody like Harriet Tubman, who allegedly was an imported slave from Africa, knew how to get from one part of the country to the other with no maps, with no schooling, you know what I'm saying? And then at the same time, it doesn't explain how all of these giant buildings and these massive structures were here, and the people they calling today Indians, who they say was here before us, they didn't build them. You know what I'm saying? And all of these mounds and all these castles and all the stuff that was here, and all of these statues with black people's faces and stuff on them for all of these thousands of years been here. But then we're supposed to believe that these people were able to come with no help, with no nothing, and just was able to just build up a whole infrastructure of stones and bridges and forts and geometric castles that, you know, astound even today's architecture. They can't even build stuff like that no more. Yet we're supposed to believe that these people were able to do all of this while literally coming out of an ice box in Europe, maybe 150 years before they came into contact with us. So none of that stuff made sense to me. Like, it didn't make sense to me that if the country was 225 years old, and they've been at war for 220 years of that 225 years. When was the 5 years of freedom? 5 years of no war? Where did that happen? If places like the Empire of Morocco, which was the first to recognize recognize America, right, as a republic, had a treaty with them in 1786 to 1787, but this place that we call the Kingdom of Morocco wasn't established until 1956. Then where was the Empire of Morocco between 1787 and 1956? You know what I'm saying? That don't make sense. It also don't make sense that the Civil Rights Act that everybody that fought and marched for and all of that, before it was called the Civil Rights Act, the real name of it is the Indian Rights Act. Yet and still, when they talk about the fact that the so-called people that look like us is the original indigenous people to the Americas, and not just the America, the world, you get a lot of pushback from people that look like us because they have been inundated with such a beat down narrative that they've accepted it as if it is true. And if I can get you to accept something about yourself that isn't true, then I become your God. And so once I can become your God in that way by getting you to assimilate into an identity and something that is not necessarily accurate to you, I can then make you believe anything. I could say I got you from the moon. I could say I went to the moon. You know what I'm saying? And you'll believe it, especially if I put it on TV. However, at the same time, we got pictures that prove that they never even did that. So if they didn't do that and they lied about that, that was just almost 60, 70 years ago. So if they lied about that, that means they lied about everything. Yet we take what they say on face value, or as they say in law, prima facie, meaning on its face is true. And then we're supposed to, and then what they do is they put their little agents that have been so brainwashed to believe all of their lies to then castigate people like me or people like you who don't go along with the narrative, that actually go beyond that and then can show and prove with their own literature that none of this is true. Yet,
exactly, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, the literature matters. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I in these spaces I'll bring up. It's like every time you bring up the literature, they say, "Well, who wrote it?" Well, anybody can write a book. It's like they just keep moving the goalposts. It's like, well, when you go to school, they have to read certain verified bodies of work just to get certain accreditation. So knowledge does matter. You have to keep reading, though. It's not going to all be in one
but
book.
then these same people who say that, you know, well, who wrote the book and who did this, so that don't matter. That could be switched. These same people will then go to school to try to get degrees from books. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so, okay, this book matter, but then this book don't matter. So it's like they constantly juxtaposing to keep the veil on. And, you know, I've learned that you can't cast pearls to swine. You can't switch horses in midstream. You can't get people to believe something that they're not, especially if you believe in freedom. See, I believe in love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. So I believe in freedom so much that if your freedom dictates that you want to continue to be a slave, then I'll support you in that. You know what I'm saying? And that's the difference between releasing the ego when it comes to this type of stuff. Like, I'm 51, you know what I mean? So I don't debate.
You look good, beloved. You look good for your age, brother, for real.
Yeah, more. I don't waste time and going back and forth with people about what they believe and their ideology, because see, what you believe in means that you don't know, because when you know something, you don't believe it, you know it. So you know your parents, you don't believe your parents. You know what I'm saying? You know you should know yourself. You shouldn't believe yourself. You can believe in yourself, but believing in yourself is not as powerful as knowing yourself. Because when you know yourself, you know your nature and what defines you. When you believe in yourself, you're trying to figure out things about yourself that you don't know. So you can know 1 + 1 = 2. You understand? But you can only believe in Jesus. You know what I'm saying? You can only believe in Allah. You can only believe in certain things because you don't know. You only know based on what you're told, because then these same people who don't like books will then throw the Bible in your face and then start quoting from the Bible. You know what I mean? But they pick and choose what they like within that. But it's not just the Bible. They do it with the Quran. They do it with the Rig Veda. They do it with the Torah. They do it with whatever they can to take the power away from themselves. But them same books say that the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, is within.
It's within. And I say this all the time. I say it's like because you know, before you know your mother's name, you know the name of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? I was born and raised in the church. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, you go through your progressions, so you learn the truth, knowledge of self. So it's like, you know, I gotta be a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I fell into Islam. What really made me get into Islam is because I felt like it was my right. Because when I started learning about the Moors, it's like, even though I know that the Moors are more than just Muslims,
right?
It seemed like the last time we was in power, that was the faith we had. So I felt like it was more of a rite of passage more than
it's the way of,
you know what I'm saying?
way of following a certain line of thought, because we have both sides of. We were in both sides of the conflict. You know what I mean? When they speak of the Moors being Muslims, like that's just one aspect of that. And then the term Muslim is a modern word. That was redone from the word Muslim. The word Muslim is actually an old Algonquin Delaware word. It's not even Arabic. That comes from this side of the country. And it represented an ancient fief holder, or ancient title holder. You understand what I'm saying? So it was then adopted around the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, you know what I mean, by those Moors who were in that era or in that area at the fall of Rome, and then went into the expansion. But then there was a split, you see what I'm saying? Whereas the so-called Pale Arabs, who were worshiping a idol, because Allah was just one of the 365 idols that they was worshiping out there. That was just one of them. And that version of it had two arms on one side, had horns like the devil, and a phallus. You see what I'm saying? And two like cloven hooves almost. So low key, that's who they still worshiping as Allah out there. You dig what I'm saying? That's why we supposed to have our own. That's why, like I said, at the rise of the Moorish Empire in antiquity, there was a split between us and them. That's why in places like Granada, which just represented one of the strongholds that we had of the global empire that we were maintaining. You know what I'm saying? That's why we're the indigenous people of all Earth, of Earth itself. Like the term Africa, they want to localize us to one place, but we name that place Africa. Africa is a Latin word. You understand what I'm saying? So when we say that Afri or Afrique, you know what I mean? In the old Carthaginian, that came from the Carthaginian. And those Carthaginians came from a people called the Phoenicians. And those Phoenicians came from a people called the Canaanites. And within that whole sphere of Canaanites, you had what you call those barbarous peoples that were also over here, who again, they refer to as today as the Algonquin, the Tasalagi, the Wabanaki, the Seneca, the Anasazi. These are all Muslim names. You see what I'm saying? The Chickamauga, the Panahasua, the Pohatuan, like these are all ancient names that's still here. The Muskogee, right? So all of that had to be reconstructed. You understand what I'm saying? All of that, in order for people to come over here and take over, they had to basically wipe away all of that ancestral connection, so that way we would always feel like we are foreigners in our own home. Then what they did was create the idea again that we all could, 100 million people could be taken from Western Africa and be brought over here on ships that again had no toilets, had no running water, had no facilities on a boat, you know what I'm saying, on 3 ships or whatever that came over at a time when, like I said, the people who they saying did this was basically 150 years just out the cave. So that couldn't happen. And if you was to look at an atlas, just basic math, if you was to take 100 million people from one place and bring them over here, like there would be no people over there now. You know what I'm saying? Not to mention that most of the so-called African states that exist there are only about our grandmothers. Our great-grandmothers is older than all them African states today. And you got to ask yourself also, if they're so different, then why are most of the African states names written in English? You know what I'm saying? If that's the case, you see what I'm saying? So these questions, when you really start getting into the dissecting of them, most modern Pan-Africanists or African apologists or whatever, they can't really get into that. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of them have sworn oaths not to reveal any of the stuff I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying? And then they had students who they purposely miseducated in this form of miseducation that is passing off as real education. And so now when you start talking to them, they can't really dispute anything. They got to go along with what they were taught. You see what I'm saying? Exactly. So again, this is all still based on belief. Because when you're in Africa, for instance, they don't call themselves Africans. They call themselves what their nationality is, whether they're Cameroonian, whether they're Senegalese, whether they're Ugandan, whether they're Burkina Faso, whether they Cote d'Ivoire. You see what I'm saying? That's what they refer to themselves as, because Africa as a continent is one of the most genetically diverse places in the world. You could have somebody that's living in your village and then a village right adjacent to them, and genetically y'all have phenotypically the same skin color, but genetically have totally different genetics. See what I'm saying? But what the white man do, the quote unquote white man, not the WHIT white man, but the WIGHT white man, what he do is he lump everybody into a racial demographic, a color system. You see what I'm saying? Because the type of law that these people practice is called colorable law. And when you're under a colorable law system, you have to be identified by a color. You understand? So white and black is not a color thing. It's a status and class thing. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
They've
So I want
made
to
it.
ask you.
Go ahead.
Go. No, go ahead. I'm gonna let you finish your wisdom, because I want
No,
to ask you
that's
the question
good.
too, because the crowd, the audience I got, I want a lot of them don't know the basics of what we're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Nah.
So I really want to. I want to read something from this book called The Dogs of God, and I want you to tell
Great
me how
book
you
about the Moors. Yep.
Thank you. I want you to tell me how you feel about this verse, and make the connections to why this term Moor is important to the American so-called FBA or the American Negro or the American Hebrew Israelite. I want you to explain why the term Moor has a significance that those words may or may not have. So in this book, it says, in fact, it is little appreciated, especially by Americans, how intimately the discovery of the New World is bound up with the victory of Christianity over Islam in the so-called Spanish Reconquest, with the expulsion of Spanish Jews, the terrible Spanish Inquisition, and with the papacy of a Borgia Pope. In this book, I've tried to make those links. Is one of the enduring ironies of this period that the barbaric medieval institution of the Spanish Inquisition contributed greatly to the founding of the first nation state. It has been suggested that the three most important years in American history are 1492,
That's right.
1770, 1776, and
Yep.
1865.
That's
Of
right.
these, 1492 goes far beyond American history. It is
Right.
pivotal as well in Spanish history and Jewish history and Arab and world and church history.
That's right.
Indeed, it is difficult to imagine another single year in the past millennium when so many significant strands of history came together and so changed the world in one
Right.
swoop. The
That's right.
completion of the 500-year movement to conquer the Moors, the end of the 800-year reign of the glorious culture of Islamic Spain, the consolidation of the modern Spanish state, the sinister explosion of the Spanish Inquisition, the Spanish Renaissance in art, literature, the explosion of the Jews, discovering the New World, and the subsequent division of the world between Spanish and Portuguese spheres of influence. When you hear that, what stands out and why should that be significant to Black Americans today?
1492 was the end of the millennial reign. When they talk about in the Bible that Yeshua, Yahweh Shai came and was supposed to come back and all of that. When you look at the typical dress of the old Moors of the old Moorish Empire, you will see that they literally dress the same way that Yeshua, Yahweh Shai, we used to dress, with the burnous and the turban and the flanking fez and all of that. Like, that's how they dress. So the millennial reign was that of Granada. And the Moors specifically were the ones who deposed the Romans, who themselves were of Moorish stock as well. Like, we gotta get this idea of white people, of what the modern version of what white people tell us that history was, when these people wasn't in play like that. And what it was that you had one faction of old Moors who were idol worshippers, the Romans, and you had another faction of Moors who were dealing more with the true essence of human spirituality. And those two things came into conflict in what they referred to as the war between the Order of Christ and the Order of Islam. Islam is an acronym for I self law am master, right? It also was another way of saying Islamism, or what they refer to today, what the Prophet Noble Ali referred to as Islamism. And this was a way of life with the tenets of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality being the forefront center of that. And this was a way for the medieval world of those Moors to break away from the tyranny of these idol worshiping, human sacrificing, hostile takeover in type of people who were also dark skinned, you know what I'm saying, brown skinned or whatever, who were following after what they perceived their gods wanted them to do. And so we subjugated them, and from that point freed the entire world. Okay, the entire world benefited from the Moorish expanse, and that went across into India, it went into China, it went into parts of what we could today call Africa, it went here in America, you understand? And it was a unifying factor through the imperial nature, and the stronghold was places like Granada specifically. So when 1492, which is really 492 because the one was added after the fall to make it seem like more time had passed than it actually did, because this is why they kept flipping up the calendar. See what I'm saying? So when this happened, what you had was you had those Moors who by this, after 1,000 years, a lot of them had intermarried, you see what I'm saying, with these ones that they had deposed. And through that intermarriage, now they now had children that were now of both natures. And so the Roman side of them started to come up, because at this time there was no Europe, there was no Spain, there was no Portugal, there was none of these places. These places didn't exist. Those people, or those what we call Europa or Europe, that was all at the time just the western portion of Asia. See what I'm saying? So you had the barbarous empire on, let's say, from the American side.
But there is some maps where this said it's called Eurasia. I have seen that.
Yeah. So you have that on this side is the barbarous side. On, let's say, from the Rome to the west, right? So let's say from Spain, that we know Spain over there today, because it was also over here today, going western, that's all the barbarous side. Then from Rome going east, that's all what they call the Tartarian side, or the Tartar side, you see? So you have this two expansive aspects of Moorish culture that had different factions within it that all commingled in the stronghold of Granada. So when Granada fell, a lot of the empire had now been broken up, right? So it used to be empires, kingdoms, and dominions. And these empires, kingdoms, and dominions after 1492 broke up into nations, countries, and states. You see what I'm saying? And out of that, you had a lot of these Moors who then decided that they were going to take these Roman types, wanted to take back these old titles and then set up separate states that they now could use against those Moors to now consolidate their power, and then blackmail them by saying, well, if you want to stay here, you got to stop being like this and go into being like that. You see what I'm saying? Kind of like if you move into a new neighborhood, and even though you got a lot of people that look like you two individuals, so now you got to either be in this gang or you got to be in that gang, but you don't want to be in either. But in order for you to survive, you got to choose. So this is where this type of mentality germinated from. And so out of that, the reorganization of this Moorish Empire came in the term of the Spanish, today we would call the Spanish portion. And of that Spanish portion, you had another section that you would call the Portuguese, right? Who they refer to as the Portuguese, right? And so these are still Moorish factions, but they're amalgamated now. And now what they're doing is that they're working together to reorganize everybody else that they had been under up until this point. And this is what started the so-called Inquisition, in which now they're going to force them to worship idols and all of that stuff to pay them back for the 1,000+ years that we had ruled over them, and forbid them from doing that. And then this is where the term Christianity starts coming in. You see what I'm saying? Because the Moorish Empire, as it stands, it was Islamic in its complexion, but there were Moors who were Nazarenes, right? Which is the original Christian thing. There were Moors that were Muslims, right? There were Moors that were what you would call Dravidians. You had the Mauryan dynasty that ruled over India. for a couple of thousand years, right? You can look that up. They were also called the Chandragupta dynasty. They ruled over that. So when India was at its height, one of the languages they developed there was called Urdu, okay? And that was what they expanded there. They took over ancient China in 752 and ruled that up until the late 1500s. You see what I'm saying? And then that the complexion of that began to change. And so a lot of us then retreated back over here. You see what I'm saying? And then what happened was these people literally followed us and came back over here. And then this is when you get the so-called the discovery now. So when they talk about the expulsion of the Jews, the Moorish Jews, those were Moors. The so-called Hebrews were Moors. The so-called Muslims, they were Moors. You see what I'm saying? And once they followed them back over here, that's when the whole war started on this side. You see what I'm saying? And now that the Romans had reconsolidated themselves as nations, countries, and states, this is where you get the rise of the Romance languages, French, the Francos, right? The lingua franca, which is where you get the term France from. This is where France started to develop. Then you get the Al-Germania. This is when you get the German thing. Then you get the rise of, like I said, Portugal. Then you get España, which is Spain. Then you get what was another power of the time? The Dutch, right? At this time, though, all of these are melanated people, but culturally they're different because they're still following this old, like I said, post-Roman ideology of low-key idol worship and power through subjugation. You see what I'm saying? And now their enemies were, again, their cousins or their forefathers, which was the traditional Moors, who, again, repressed that for thousands of years. So there's a lot of books, like I said, that's on this. There's a book called The Golden Age of the Moor by Stanley Poole. There's another book called The Golden Trade of the Moor by Beauville. There's another book called The Wars in Barbary. There's another book called Consecrated Talismans, volumes 1-3. There's another book called The Primitive Black Nations. There's another book called Anacalypsis, volumes 1 and 2. There's so much history on this that when you leave this America, like I'm a declared Moor, and I've traveled as a Moor. Like when you see my passport and my identification, like I'm in my headdress and all of that. And when I go to these different countries and everything, they all know what's up. Whether it was Japan, whether it was Europe, you know what I'm saying? Whether it was the Caribbean, certain parts of the Caribbean, you know, especially like Spanish places, like Panama and places like that. Like they already know. You see what I'm saying? Because they got pictures of people that look like us on the walls. You know what I mean? They got actual representations of us in our proper nationality as Moorish peoples, or what they refer to as ancient Mauritanians, all over them places. So they seeing me, and you can go to the museum and then see people just like me there. So then in that, I have different conversations than people that's just there like as just regular tourists and shit. You know what I'm saying? Because they know. It's just that they know that they've also repressed that to such a degree that our people over here are running around somewhat blind and have been turned off from this type of thing because the only thing they know about Moors is they enslaved a bunch of white women, and they participated in the slave trade. But how could they do that while at the same time was the ones warring it? We're the only ones on record that warred against them. We're on record in subjugating these so-called European powers to the point that they all had to unify. Like you said, that was in 1492. So between 1492 and 1865, this is the main war, where now the war is brought back over here, and now it's going through different phases. Over here was called the French Indian War. You had the Chickamauga Wars. You had the Sharifan Wars. You had the wars between the French and the Indians, and then you had the Dutch Wars, and all of these were Moorish wars that were taking place here in America, which they call America. You see what I'm saying? Between that, which culminated into the birth of what they call the Confederacy. But this Confederacy had nothing to do with white people. Those white people in that Confederacy, those were the slaves of the so-called Moor, because the very word slave, S-L-A-V-E, comes from to Slav, which describes the exact people who were enslaved, who were slaves, which was them, the Slovenians, the Slovakians, the Circassians, right? We had in subjugation over here. And so what the dirty Moors did, who were now referring to themselves as Europeans, they went and freed them and then used them in the wars against the rest of us. So that's just like today, me and you get into a beef, and instead of me and you handling it as men between each other, you go and get the white man and work with him to knock me off. You see what I'm saying? It's the same circumstance. It's just constantly been happening. It's just that we don't know the origins of these things because we're still going from the victim mentality of what somebody did to us, instead of realizing what we did to get in this situation by, again, allowing ourselves to fall from our noble nature, which is exactly what we're doing now. Which is exactly what's happening right now.
So exactly. So let me ask you a question, because a lot of people, they feel like the word Moor just means a certain people in a certain time period that's North African and Arab or Berber. Why are the American Negroes Moors?
Because they are the original people that was already here, and in all of the several states, meaning the original states of the so-called original Confederacy, the original Union, they are the only ones that cannot be enslaved. Think about that. On all of the books, when you look up Moors in these different territories and stuff, they say that no Moors or Turks, because Moors and Turks is the same thing, they cannot be enslaved. Whereas the Negro, whereas the Black, these were the denationalized Moors. These were the ones who fell under the jurisdiction and the sway of the European Roman dirty Moors. They now could be enslaved because they were now no longer a part of the original empire, kingdom, and dominions of their forefathers. And just as the Bible said, what it said, it says, honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So the name of your mother, your honoring your mother and your father, that is another way of saying honor those that came before you in their original name. There's no such thing as a Negro. That's a creation of the United States, which means that has a copyright and a trademark. That means that if you adopt that, that means you're a part of that. The term African American is actually today owned by a food company. And the copyright and patent holder of that is a man named Charles Young, who again is a Caucasian man. You see what I'm saying? But so when you identify as an African American, you are then putting yourself under the jurisdiction or classification of a trademark and copyrighted food, which is why they treat us like food. You know what I'm saying? When you use another term, like another made up term they got now is FBA, like that's trademarked by the dude who introduced that. You understand? So when you use that to identify yourself as, there's no nation in the world called FBA. There's no nation in the world called ADOS. There's no nations named that. See what I'm saying? But I can look at a place like Morocco. I can look at a place like Mauritania. I can look at a place called America, because anything with M, with AL, AM, MER, MAR, that's all the root word of the foundational dominion that your ancestors set up for you. So when they say that you have a slave name, they want you to believe that the reason why we look the way we look is because some white man came and raped your grandmother, and now we look like this instead of looking like Africans. That's a fallacy. No recessive gene, right? No matter what type of rape you get, according to them, the minute you got one drop of melanated or Moorish blood in you, it stops you from being one of them. So how can a recessive gene make you take over a dominant gene? It can't happen. What happened was the slaves, the Slavs, after Reconstruction, adopted your name. And thus that name that they took from you now became the slave's name. You understand? And now they switched the ownership, because the word emancipation comes from the Latin term emancipato, which means to transfer ownership. And that's what they did. Remember in Django, you seen Django, right?
Of course.
Remember in Django when Django came to the Candyland plantation, and after a while, he told Carl Candy, Leonardo DiCaprio, to meet him in the upper room, and they went into the upper room. As soon as you came in, you seen Steven signing all the checks. Remember that? Steven was the one signing the checks. Carl Candy was the one buck dancing, acting like he was in charge, but Steven was the one who was running everything. That's how they letting you know. That's how it happened. That's how it went. We had a bunch of boule, dirty Moors like Steven that was acting as if they were the head nigga, right? And they allowed the white slave family to come in as the decoy, right? And then occupy the face and make them think that the people brutalizing them, right, is always this white man, which it was, but they were being propped up to do that by the nigga behind them. And that's what's happening today. That's who you think Al Sharpton is. Who do you think what you call it is? Any of the Obama is. This is what they all doing. They've been running the same game forever. And then they put it in your face like that, and Negroes still don't see it.
Still don't see it.
And then even in Django, it started with when Django got free, the first suit he put on was the blue suit. Remember, he had the blue, like Royal Lord Fauntleroy suit on, right? That represented
the white horse.
Right. That represented him now being brought into the Blue Lodge, right? That's where you start to get the first degree of knowledge that something else is going on. And then in that, he could now ride on the horse, right? And then in the Blue Lodge, he started what? Ripping the white man, right? Then he graduated into the green, right? He had the green joint on, right? Which represented now Islam, because that's now the color of Islam. And then when he had the green on, that's when he was really going at them, shutting the whole situation down. Then by the end of the movie, he was in what? He had the maroon on, right? Because the Maroons were the Moors. They were the ones who had their own situation. And Maroons wasn't just in Jamaica. These were anybody that was of Moorish descent that was railing against the who were part of the old Barbary powers that were fighting against the new so-called European Romans in black and white face, because this is represent the black and the white checkers, because they work together. Understand? The black sellout needs the white man to work together, so that way the white man could look like he's oppressing him, and then the black man could look like he's rebelling, when really they all working together because they all Masonic brothers, just like in Rosewood. Remember the movie Rosewood? When the white man,
I never seen Rosewood. I couldn't. It used to make me emotional.
Go back and watch that movie. In that, they had a white man who was a Freemason who raped a white woman, and then he escaped into the so-called black community. And then when he seen the Freemason lodge, he flashed the sign to the black Mason, and then the black Mason brought him in and hit him. And then he escaped and then lied to everybody and told him that the black people did it, and they went in and destroyed and burnt up the town and all that. So this is what I'm saying. They constantly showing you, just like in the movie 12 Years a Slave, that dude was free. He was a free man in the North. He was a Moor. And then what happened? They kidnapped him and then brought him into the South and then put him into slavery. You see what I'm saying?
You know what show that was dope, that kind of like that a lot of black people slept on? That Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, that's another example.
And I had got in touch, and it's funny because remember I sent you that script because the sister of the woman who produced the show wanted to do a show about the Moors because they knew I knew some information about it.
And they were like, "Nah."
And the script was a little fugazi. I sent it to you, and I'm like, "Yo, check that shit out."
Yeah,
but
and I was like,
that was years ago. I'm like, nah, that's what I thought. I'm like, man, check this shit out. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, but that show Lovecraft Country dropped a lot of jewels though, as far as how we locked in. Because what I be trying to tell people is the way these Europeans get power from us is through marriage.
Yes,
they would marry into us, and then kill off the original phenotype, but they would still keep the name, which would make them eligible to inherit what you got.
Look what happened. They killed Kang, right? They killed Kang in that movie, right? And then who was able to live? Monstros. That's basically what is the black gay Freemason. He's the one that winds up living at the end, but the heterosexual original man that they sacrificed, the white woman and the black woman sacrificed at the end to open up the portal so that way they can bring in energy into themselves.
And she literally said that. She said, I need you to die. She said, I need you to die so I can live forever. I mean, we're trying to unlock the
exactly
life, but the black man had to die.
Exactly. The heterosexual original man who wound up becoming Kang, the Lord of Time, right? And then what did they do in reality? In the reality, they used the white woman to destroy him in real life, right?
I don't think that, the people don't understand how Hollywood and with these, when they do what is called typecasting, they use certain people for certain roles over and over to paint a picture. Like, look at Morgan Freeman. He played the Moor.
He played God. That's right.
He played the scientist who discovered what Lucy was on.
And he's the one who gave Batman his technology in Dark Knight, right? And Batman represented Anubis.
Morgan.
Batman also is from an ancient Mayan god named Quetzalcoatl. And when you look up, if you look up Batman in ancient Maya Batman, it'll come up. They still got a joint. And this was something that we used to wear. This is all coming from the Moors. This is all Moorish history. However, because they can't date Moor to any specific time, you see what I'm saying? It's timeless, and thus it cannot be copyrighted. It cannot be trademarked. It cannot be identified as a form of property or chattel slavery. That's why they don't want you to deal with it, because then it takes you out of the modern reconstructional timeline and puts you back into the proper timeline that we as original people exist in for real. And thus it takes you out of it. I've seen it. Like, I've traveled on planes, like with my the whole Indian headdress on. You dig what I'm saying? Just to see if I could do it. You know what I mean? And I've put on the burnous, the fez, and all of that, the turban and all that, and been on it, and I don't have no problems. Matter of fact, they treat me the way they supposed to. You see what I'm saying? Because that's naturally my identity.
It's funny, and I want to ask you a question. The brother got a question, but it's funny that you said that, right? I was reading an article years ago, and they were saying around the time of like early 1900s. They said a lot of racist white men. It was a group of black people that started to wear turbans.
Yeah,
and they would deflect.
They would leave them alone.
They would leave them alone. They said that when they called them like exotic or Asiatic, something like that. They were saying that they would deter the races, that the racist men wouldn't.
No, they would leave them alone.
They wouldn't bother them.
Because remember, these are they honor their forefathers. The abolitionists were white males fighting for their own freedom from the Moors. They were the ones we was enslaving. That's why they had to create a legal term called the free white person. And to be a free white person, you could not be a Caucasian. You could not be a white male because it didn't apply to you. It only applied to original Moorish people or Moorish Americans. And that was a whole thing. But because so many had been reorganized and put through the military installations now today that we call HSBCUs, they fell into the jurisdiction under these people. Because remember, all these white men, all these people that you see that was white males and all of that, they were under the whole Freemasonic jurisdiction. So they know the difference because they all Shriners and all of that shit themselves. So they know the difference. And they were taught on how to deal with true Moors that came back, or when they were coming back into their own, and how they were supposed to treat them. Because they know that all of these buildings, Washington, D.C. and all that, they know that all of that was all of the buildings that we had established from antiquity. They've always been here. They didn't build anything. All they did was move in at a time when we were at our lowest and put their name on shit, adopted our names, and then created a wicked system to be able to keep us out. and then bring everybody else that was foreign over us and put us at the bottom. Why do you think they need the black vote so much? Because having our vote means that they have another 100 and 200 years to do their bullshit. You understand? Because you have to, in order for you, if you was to move into my house and I'm the landlord, but I forgot. So what you got to do is you got to treat me somewhat good in order to keep yourself in the house. Because one day, if I remember that it is my house, guess what happened? You got to go. And that's what's happening now. So that's why they don't want nobody to deal with the Moorish paradigm. That's why in the clip that you read, it went from 1492 to 1865, right? And then that was when the height of the Civil War. And then, like I said, after the war, between 1865 and 1871, they set up the Spanish-American War to get the rest of the Moorish empires and the Moorish bailiffs and sheriffs that was already here and shipped them out to fight the foreign wars. And then they used that to set up what they call the Wilmington Race Riots, which led to the destruction of all of the so-called Black Wall Streets or so-called original people's towns that we had all of the sway in. We had our own oil fields over here. I got pictures of it. We was producing 3,000 barrels of oil a day. That was just in one place. We had stuff that we had tanning belts. We had leather refineries. We had oil refineries. That's what the Grand Canyon was. It was a mining facility that still has all of the ancient so-called Egyptian or whatever artifacts, because all of that stuff was over here. We was on this earth when all of the continents was together. So it was possible to walk from Florida to Egypt over there if you needed to. That's how long we've been here. But the problem is we want to date ourselves and try to put ourselves in the timeline to match with them. And they came on the planet way later. They haven't been here for as long as you think they have. Just like I told you, most of the my great-grandmother is older than all of the African states combined, B. So this is the problem, is that we keep identifying with somebody else's identity. And then when we start talking about the true identity of our people, because people want to associate Moors with just being Muslims, or more, they want to associate Moors with being anti-Christian or any of this. Under the old, in them books that I'm talking about, they said that the Moors, the Muslims, the Muslims, the Nazarenes, which is the original Christians, the Hebrews, the Dravidians, and all of them lived in such harmony together that you couldn't tell one from the other. You understand? We're the ones that refine the world's food stocks. You understand what I'm saying? Like, how you think oranges wound up in Europe? How you think pumpkins wound up in China? How you think grain, wheat, and all of that wound up in rice and all of that wound up in Japan and all that? Like, we imported all of that. How you think coffee is found in the DNA of some of the mummies? How you think cocaine? We was importing cocaine, poppy seeds into Egypt over there. The oldest pyramid over there is the Step Pyramid. Meanwhile, that Step Pyramid is just another version of the trapezoid pyramid that's over here. There's more pyramids, trapezoid pyramids over here than anywhere else in the world. So how do we explain that? That's the whole thing. Nobody want to explain nothing. They just want to go along and act like we, again, was just this perpetual victim race that don't got no real history. But again, I've traveled, B, as in my proper self. And like I said, I'm one who grew up with the whole Moorish so-called red, black, and green paradigm of we got to be this and we from Africa and all of that. But one day, my grandmother, blessed the dead, she wound up dating the attaché to the ambassador of the Gambia, which is a country in Africa. And I came in one day, my red, black, and green medallion on and whatever, talking all of this Pan-African stuff. And he sat me down, he looked at me, he said, "You are not African." He told me straight up. He said, all of that you talking it ain't happened like that. He said, we don't have any history of selling y'all to slavery like that. And I'm arguing with this man. He's like, that's not true. Find out who your people are. He said, your people are from right here. This is your country. We the only people in the world who they try to convince that the place we born is not where we from. What kind of shit is that? Meanwhile, everybody else in the world is coming here to take our place. How does that make sense? See what I'm saying? And this is what nobody want to deal with. Everybody want to try to go along to get along, and they want to act like there's something wrong with being from America. No, this place is the best place on earth.
Yes, and I be trying to tell people that I'm like, yo, they trying to get you to devalue what's yours, yo.
Exactly.
Like, I'm American, and I say that a lot of black people get bugged out by that. Like, you mean? I'm like, bro, I'm American, bro. Like, I'm not letting these people define it for me.
Come
Just
on,
because
man.
when you think of America, you think of some races or the Klan or slavery.
Exactly.
That's your mindset.
Exactly. That's not true.
Here. I'm home already.
Come on now. Like I'm from here. And everybody that on this planet want to be here, to the point they want to destroy this place before we get back to who we was being here. To the point where they don't never go to nobody in Ethiopia, or excuse me, they don't never go to nobody in India and be like, dark-skinned people in India be like, you know, you really from Africa. You should go back to Africa and do that. They don't never go to the dark-skinned Malaysian people. They don't ever go to the dark-skinned Tongolese people and none of them and try to convince them that they Africans. No, they Tongolese. They Malaysian. They Dravidian Indian. They whatever, because that's where they from. So it's the same way that they from there, I'm from here. Our people had industry over here. The reason why, like watermelon. One of the reasons why they don't like us with watermelons is because we had an international watermelon trade route where we were selling them all over the world. All over the world. So in order to break down our trade infrastructure, this is in the book Golden Trade of the Moor, to break down the infrastructure, they had to turn it into a Sambo thing by getting the denationalized slaves to act like animals and stuff, eating the watermelons and stuff, to make it now where today niggas are scared to eat watermelon in front of white people. When this is what we was using to feed our families for thousands of years. Who don't like watermelon? Like, y'all crazy. The word Sambo. The word Sambo means God. That was a god in Asia. The name of the god was Sambo Judasia. That's the name of a god. So what do? They make you think that Sambo means some sort of minstrel or some sort of nigger word. This is what they do. They just turn the word against you, make you think that that's what it is, and now it's evil. Meanwhile, they calling themselves Sambo. Meanwhile, they eating all the watermelon. Meanwhile, they live in your culture. Meanwhile, they doing everything that they telling you not to do. They living and they doing it in impunity because they done made you forbid it and made you think that it's evil. It's a scam. It's all a big hustle. It's a scam. The racist shit is a scam. All this shit is scamming. All this pineapple, all that stuff is a scam.
Give us some history on the term, the actual term more, because even in the word, like how can we recognize this word? Because people feel like it has to be spelled a certain way. Like, what's the history of the etymology of the word, and why does it apply to all of us? Because even in America, you got American.
Exactly. Moor is right in the middle of it. America, right? Amuruka, Morocco, Morocca, Mauritania. So there's different ways to spell it, but ultimately it goes all the way back to even before the continent of Mu. It's just another way of defining what was here before time. So there's in Old Hebrew, it was modern, right? Mahrim. Then in Europe, in Europa, it was Moor or Moore. In German, it's Mohr. In Old Latin, it's Maur. In Old American, it's Muur. Or in the Old Phoenician, it's Mr. Like Mr. Right? The term mayor means more. You see what I'm saying? Mayor comes from mayores. You see what I'm saying? Or mayores. You see what I'm saying? The term moreno, which means free Moor or free black. You see, that's different from negrito. You see what I'm saying? It's an ancient dialect. In ancient India, it was Mauryan. right? Mauryan. Look up the Mauryan dynasty, right? In ancient Persia, it was Mughal, right? Mughr, or Mughal, right? In ancient the ancient Scythian people, another old Asiatic Moorish type people. They were called the Tartars, right? Or the Tartarian or the Tartarians. You see what I'm saying? And what color is tar? Black, right? Right. So it has all of these different in old Berbic Libyan Latin, it was Mushlan, right? Which is the same thing, which is Moorish. You see what I'm saying? So it's like it depending on where you was at, you had Moors that was like that. You dig what I'm saying? And there's not one culture on this planet that we didn't self-initiate at one point or the other, because we're the oldest people that were here. The oldest bones or whatever in the Americas go back to the Guadeloupe man, the Guadeloupe woman. Then you can look at the bones they just found of the oldest man in Morocco. They just did the DNA test of the I forget the family's name of this brother in South Carolina, where they have the Sundry Free Moors Act that says that they cannot enslave Moors, that goes all the way back before the United States was even founded. You can look this up, the Sundry Free Moors Act. And they found that the patrilineal descent of the father and son of this one original man in South Carolina goes back over 385,000 years.
And my family
Right
is
here.
from, my mother's side of the family is all from Colombia. You know
see
what I'm saying? The whole side. And
that
you
means
know, a
that
couple years ago, right? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but a couple years ago, they had a commemorative quarter for Fort Moultrie or something like that for South Carolina.
Moultrie, right, with the quarter, with the Moor
they had the
on
man
it,
with the fez.
with the Moor on it, with the crescent. You
Yes,
see
he
what I'm
did.
saying? Going back to when we was telling time by the moon. You understand what I'm saying? We've been on this planet for time. The Circle 7 Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America says, and big up to the Prophet Noble Jalil, says that time never was when man was not. And if there ever was a time that time began, then surely there would be a time that time would end. That is a circular, cyclical loop. And what it basically means is that Nation of Islam has no birth record. We don't have no birth record. You don't know how long the Moors been on this earth. But we've been here for so long that we done forgot. You understand what I'm saying? So now that we remembering, we are bringing back the pieces of Osiris and putting it back together again ourselves with no help. That's why we are reorganizing our own history. That's why those that want to focus and hold on to the old paradigm or what they told us the fake history is going to go down with the ship. Those of us that know the difference ain't, because you have a right to a nationality, and your nationality is dependent upon your free national descent name. And you come from ancient people. There it is. That's right. The Moor, the Motre.
Y'all see this, right? We y'all
right.
see y'all, because y'all come on my chat, because I just want to chop it up to people, because I get in these panels with these people and they just be thinking it's just some mumbo jumbo.
A lot of them be agents. A lot of them be paid opposition. Don't even trip. That's why you can't cast your pearls of swine. You can't keep going at them like that, because in the end, that's taking more energy from you. The truth don't need no alibi.
That's why I be walking off these panels. They be mad at me, right, beloved? I'll be on the panel with these fools, and once I see that the conversation ain't going where it's going, I leave. It's like, I'm not about to stand up here and argue with y'all for 6 or 7 hours. I'm bringing out scholarship, and you talk, and you ain't telling me nothing. You ain't bringing me no
because they can't.
I'm not about to argue with you.
Because the Negro only grow as high as the knee. You understand? And though once you see, when you sleeping on the floor, you can't fall out the bed. So now that we done reached the level where we can stand up and we can go from belief into knowing, because we're in the age of knowing now. If you don't know your nationality, you see what I'm saying? Then you're gonna go down with the rest of these dirty Moors and these dirty Romans that got you believing that you was a slave from Africa, or you were descended from a slave or whatever. How can you be descended from a Slovenian and you this color? That don't make no damn sense. That's why these people be looking at you like you crazy. That's why they're gonna keep dangling the reparation carrot at you. If you want reparations so bad and the Africans sold you, how come you ain't going to the Africans for reparations? Why are you going to the slaves for the reparations? That's how you know it's something wrong with the mentality and all of that. However,
I feel like our issue is a global, international genocide.
Everybody's in on it. Everybody is in on it. And we're the only ones. Our culture is what dictate world culture. Just look at hip hop. We dictate what is cool and what is dope in the world. The only reason why they ain't nuked this place into oblivion is because we still here. And they know that they cannot get rid of us the way that they want. Even if they was to nuke this place, we still gonna be here. We have been here. I just told you, they done just found DNA that we've been here for over 385,000 years. And that means it's triple that. Because you know they're gonna bring the numbers down. So it's triple that. So all we got to do, like I said, is declare who and what we are and stop acting like your belief is some sort of badge of honor when men and women are respected based upon the intellect and their free national name and what they know. If you don't know who you are, if you don't have no nationality, then you can't talk to me about nothing. Because like I said, I done been to the halls of power. I done talked to these devils. I done talked to people outside of this bubble. And they all look at me and be like, well, when the rest of y'all people gonna wake up like this? So I'm not here to be, and my ego is not such that I believe that I have the answers for everybody to do what they know. That's not what it's about. What it's about is leading by example, by raising up yourself and your family, by practicing the things that give us depth and strength of character, honor, chivalry. And when I say chivalry, I'm not talking about Freemasonry. I'm talking about honor, integrity, being upright, respecting the family, having dignity. See what I'm saying? Having decorum, having shame. You see what I'm saying? Like these things are necessary for a man and a woman to take their place amongst the affairs of men. And if you don't have the divine spark within you to do that, you need to sit down and go back to the sexy red table and the rest of these Negroes and wait to get scooped up, while the rest of us do something to preserve what is left of our empire. Because only we can do it. Ain't nobody gonna give us nothing. We have to take it. And we take it by practicing love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality in the name of our ancestors. That means that you don't change. You don't got to change your name to be an African, whatever. Your name is just good enough. Just the name that you're born with is your proper name. There's no white man gave you no name Johnson and you named after some slave. Them niggas didn't even have names. They couldn't even read and write. So how was they going to write down a name to give you? They showed you in the movie who was signing the checks. They showed you in the movie who knew where the brandy was and all of that. Who knew who was really running the plantation. The nigga that looked like you, but he acting like the butler. There used to be a TV show called Benson with Robert Guillaume. And that whole show was basically the same Django shit. Benson, who was the butler, was the one running the entire house for them white people. They couldn't live without Benson. Go back and look at some of them old TV shows like that. So that's what I'm saying.
Y'all hear what's being told to y'all? Y'all have to support the brother. We got his chat, his super chat, because they demonetized me a couple of days ago.
Of course.
I could have fixed it, but I didn't. The way they framed it, it's like I don't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So I don't even know. Like I don't even know how to fix it.
I already know.
I found out I just had to delete some shorts, but it's too late now. But support the brother. You getting some real high level information. Please hit that brother's Cash App. Support real information. Y'all see what we doing over here. We ain't doing the messy shit. We ain't talking about stuff that's just absolutely nothing. That's about anything. We trying to bring you concepts that you haven't heard. Knowledge is not supposed to be familiar. You're supposed to hear something you never heard before. It's supposed to be something that take your mind.
And go check everything I'm saying. I didn't gave everybody a whole list of books, man. Go and get these books and read these damn books before you come and gumming at the brother and acting like we just talking out of our behind. I've been doing this for over 25 years, man. Absolutely. I've been married to the same woman for 27 years, man. You understand what I'm saying? I've raised
and he's married. Y'all heard that? Y'all love to talk about, the man is married.
So to a melanated woman.
On all levels.
To a melanated woman, you understand? Yes. Who is also who also comes from a long line of Moors. Her last name is Cordoba.
Is Celine in the building? Because she got the dope products. I would love people to know about her products. She could just, if you got a flyer or something, we could drop in the chat because she has.
I gave you the whole link in it. It's up in there.
It's in the
description, so you can get it. I want to get it on too because my phone looks like it's about to die. So you got to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, yeah, quick, because I wanted to, I know people that said they had some specific questions, but real quick, how do you feel about the current red pill dating manosphere conversation, this man and woman debate. I want to ask you that. And two, how do you feel about religion today? Do you feel like religion is an asset to our people at this point, or is it a deterrent, or an enemy, or just about how you look at it?
The red pill stuff, that's a psychological operation that has been going on since the time of the first welfare checks and all of that started in 45 when they started working to break up the family. And the whole welfare state, the whole EBT, it all started with the single mothers. They had a movie about this. They always make a movie about it. Back in the days called Claudine. Go back and watch that movie with Diane Carroll and James Earl Jones. That'll give you the whole blueprint of what we're dealing with now. Then they had another version called Poppy. That was the same movie, but it was for Hispanic people, right? So ultimately, it's a psychological operation to keep us separated, of course. However, what it is doing is that it's bringing up dialogue between the so-called genders, but there really is no gender war, because genders can't war. You understand what I'm saying? Because gender is a thing of nature. So they're really not at war. What you're really dealing with is a culture war that is posing as a gender war when it's really ultimately a spiritual war. You see what I'm saying? To keep the original man and woman from getting together to create future gods. They want me to, as a melanated man, to have babies with every other woman on the planet, right? So that way I can produce more of them. Same way, they want her to be able to produce more with everybody else. So that way we never come back together and produce more of ourselves. Because the more of ourselves exist, the less everybody else exists. So it's a play on that. So people who are caught up in all of that and all of this fake posturing, both sides of it are basically inundated with ego. Once you leave your ego behind, you would realize that the only way out of the situation is love. It's for the original man to ask forgiveness from the woman, and the woman to ask forgiveness from the original man and start to take accountability for the fact that she has been used as a vessel to keep the black family, the so-called black family, apart. You understand what I'm saying? Because she was rewarded by being the so-called single woman, right? She was rewarded by being the so-called welfare mother. She was rewarded by giving up her children to the beast for devouring. And what has it got her? It's got her the best you could be is Kamala Harris, and she ain't even black. That's why you see all of these so-called melanated women that are in positions of power getting broke down and getting locked up. Because when you tell a woman that she's God, when you put her in a position to not have any accountability for anything, she'll destroy herself. Because her natural balance is the original man. But now they've effeminated the original man so much that now he feels like in order for him to be a man, he has to be a man either with another man or with another type of woman. But you don't never see a butterfly mating with a bee. You don't never see a bear mating with a tiger. You don't never see an ox mating with a horse. They all stay within their own vein to create more of themselves. So if they done tricked you to the degree that you are so mentally deficient that you believe that somebody that was created by God, by the Almighty Creator, whatever you want to call it, and you want to believe that there's somebody else better for you other than what was made for you, then you under mind control. And you need to figure that out within yourself. You need to stop believing shit and getting into knowing stuff. And then the other question you said?
As far as religion is concerned, do you feel like at this point in the game, is religion something that's an asset to our people, or is it something that's holding us back?
It's if you are relying on it as a form of discipline, then that's cool. But if you are now the type of person that is trying to use that to convert other people to your way of thinking or your way of religion, then you just another puppet of a earthly situation that was created for you to try to subjugate others. And again, the temple of God or the kingdom of heaven is within. Therefore, the holy ground is any ground that you walk on as an original man or woman. The holy breath is every breath that you speak that brings about love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality to your peers and people around you. The true religion is that which you rely on that allows you to give strength to others. You see what I'm saying? And then in that, you then attune that back to yourself. So we as Moors whether you're in the Moorish Science Temple of America, because not all Moors are religious. Some Moors are secular. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of feel sorry for them because, again, spirit is, again, the aspect of us that is the unseen. And everything that is seen comes from the unseen realm first. So if you don't have, or you are denying that, then you are denying 95% of the reality that we're existing in. So you're not going to see everything because it's not always going to be in a book. You know what I'm saying? Half of this understanding, the way I'm able to retain these
discernment,
this knowledge, right, and discernment and all of that is coming from the fact that at one point I read so much that I just gave up and said, whatever I'm supposed to learn from this, I'm going to. And I'm not going to kill myself or read so much that I'm going to go blind like John Henry Clark to be able to prove a point to niggas that don't care no way. And
exactly, so I see it because I tell people this. I'm like, listen, yeah, I'll read a lot to ground me, but it's when I filter it through my experience. I filter my experience through to truth. So the truth grounds me. But I'm filtering it through what I've been through and what I've seen. So it's not just the books, but it grounds me in documented truth. So it's not like it's BS. You still have to have nuance from living and being out here and interacting.
That's right. You got to have the experience to do it because the experience is what dictates the reality. And thus, I do the same. Like, it's got to the point where I started just sleeping with the books under my pillow. And I was actually starting to retain more than actually sitting there and reading it. Like, that's how I started freaking out myself with it. So that's what I'm saying about the whole situation. We have to get to the ability that we stop trying to convert people to our way of thought. If you don't agree with what I'm saying or whatever, that's cool. But you can't say that what I'm saying ain't true. Because everything that I'm saying is verifiable. And whether you want to say it or not, it don't matter. Because I'm not telling you this to convert you to Moorish science. I'm not telling you this because I want you to be a Moor. If you're so adamant against it, then that means that you, in my view, that means that you probably descended from the other side. You see what I'm saying? That was going to dealing with the other thing that put us in this position. So I'd rather you not deal with it at all, because then that keeps it more preserved and more pristine for those of us that's brought up into this. I've been doing this so long. I've had people, grandmothers and generational people come to me, and I've been able to build with families over generations. You see what I'm saying? Since I started this, you dig? And I didn't have no help. Like, I got jerked and messed around by a lot of dirty Moors, a lot of people I started out with, I had to step away from because they wasn't with it. I can't be around a bunch of people talking all this black power and all of this knowledge, this self shit and all of that, and then they all with white women, or they all with Asian women, or they all with low key dudes and shit like that. You know what I mean? I can't deal with none of that. So once I find out about that, it's not my place to then go and just blow them up like that to the public. No, I'm gonna see what you're dealing with, and I'm gonna keep it moving. You're just not gonna see me with this person no more. So if somebody asks, be like, yeah, that brother's great, but I'm not gonna get into why I'm not dealing with him, because I don't have to. Because a man, like I said, I'm at the age where I don't cast pearls of swine. I don't waste time with niggas. I don't waste time with females or anything that's gonna deter me or jeopardize what it is I'm striving to do. I'm striving to stay as consistent as I can and try to stay as egoless as I can to be able to have the discernment, to be able to observe enough, to be able to be critical and objective with this knowledge. Like, I started researching knowledge, Moorish science, from the perspective of we aren't Moors. So I started to read books to try to prove that we're not. And all I kept finding was the opposite. So that's how I knew it was real. You dig what I'm saying? Because that's what you do as a researcher. You don't go from your perspective. You go from the opposite perspective first. So that's how I know what I'm saying is real, because I can just spout off books. I can spout off dates. I can do all of that. So this way, when you go back and you're like, oh, he bullshit, and then you go back and you start reading it, or you start going back to my catalog, whether it be my app, whether it be the YouTube, whether it be all the DVDs, whether it be all of the interviews that I've done, like, I have a body of work.
Crazy body of work.
Go and check.
Crazy body of work.
So I don't have to be out here trying to convert people to a foregone conclusion. If you want to deal with it, you'll hit me up. If you don't, you won't. But I'm not, again, going to be the type to be out here to try to grandstand and try to convert people to do that. Because Moors, we don't convert nobody to Moorish science. You come into it the way that you come into it. And then once you do, you find your level of excellence, not mine, not the prophet's, not yours, but yours as an individual. So this way, what you gain from it is your knowledge. So that way you can start to spit it and intone it and feel proud walking down with your fez or your turban on or whatever, and feel individualized and empowered by that, as opposed to trying to conform to some sort of ancient or some sort of outdated prophet or religion system or whatever that wasn't even made for you. You created that for everybody else because they wasn't on this level. They wasn't on the level of knowledge itself to be able to do that. So we had to create religions to give them a way to raise themselves up. That's really what religion started from. We gave that like the same way you would give lessons to people in kindergarten that wasn't from the original culture. And we did that for millenniums. You know what I'm saying? The Dark Ages, an age is 2,146 years. So when they say the Dark Ages, plural, you don't know how long that was. So it wasn't just 1,000 years. It was thousands of years. You did?
Yeah, because I look at it like, because I look at peace is the tie that binds all faiths.
That's right.
The Jews say shalom, the Muslims say assalam, the Coptic Ethiopian, they say salam. So I'm like, peace is the thing. I feel like the aspect that's requiring all of this worship and deep, I think that's something a little darker that has co-opted the faith that has nothing to do. Because I feel like it took me a while to get there, but it's like, and I know you got to go. I'm like, why does anything need my worship? That's kind of strong. What is that?
That's these old deities that have disincorporated themselves from the old flood, and then they try to use avatars, which is people, to try to invoke them and come back into the reality through blood sacrifice. Over 2,000 people just died at Hajj the other day. People just dying. They going, working and walking around the cube and stuff, straight dying. Look at all of the people losing their homes, going to churches and shit like that, because they're worshiping deities that are really actually alchemical processes within their own body that have now disassociated themselves. And because they don't have physical bodies no more, they want to intone that into original people and use human sacrifice to allow them to exist in this realm again. That's what's going on. That's what the Luciferian stuff in the hip-hop industry is about. That's what the blood sacrifice rituals is about. They just killed Julio Fulio the other day. You know what I'm saying? They stay killing these dudes under these rituals because when they get into them systems, they all become little baby witches and warlocks. And now they get put into the gematria system, and now they become part of the food because man is the food for the divinity that he worships. You understand? So what you worship is feeding on you. So you better have your own understanding of who and what you are and what you are trying to intone before you wind up becoming dinner for somebody. Because I told you the term African American is owned by a food company. Look it up. It's owned and patented by a food company, and they turn niggas into food.
And I tell people all the time, I say, yo, and I learned this from y'all, not like y'all said this verbatim, but this is what I just picked up from learning from you and a lot of other brothers. You got to unlock the mythology of who you are.
That's right.
There's a mythology within you. You don't even know what you are. We're so busy trying to give all credit to this and pray to who's you? Who
are you? You don't even know your real name. Who are you?
We gotta, bro. We gotta do a part 2. You know, we gotta do a part 2.
Whenever, bro.
We gotta do a part 2. I'm gonna take care of you Friday. Look out for that. And yes, we definitely gotta do part 2 because
let's do it.
You got so much information what I love about you is you're able to take all of the things our people are already interested in and show them the jewel that's in front of them. You could take the comics, you could take the music, you could take the films, and it's like you don't have to take them far away. You can say you can unlock what they're already interested in.
Yes, more because I'm them.
So dope. That's what I loved about you, bro.
Thank you, more because I'm them. I was literally out here searching for it to the point where I was literally on the path. I was on it so much I was just finding books in the street. I was just leaving books out in the street for me to find. And I remember at the time, and like I said, I've been through the whole thing, been through the hip hop thing, been homeless, had my children taken, been through the baby mama thing, been through all of the stuff everybody else done been through. The only difference is I didn't let it break my spirit, and I didn't let it turn me into a hateful individual that's going to hate my own people, that's going to hate my own woman, and is going to turn me against myself. That's not what it's about. It's about us learning from this thing and finding ways to create something of value for the next generations, because our generation done. The generation under us, they done. So they're always working on the next level of the children. So there needs to be more of a pushback on all of this degenerate behavior that we see happening. And it's be happening because our people have no national identity. They have been turned against the land of their forefathers. They are constantly being told that where they from is not where they're supposed to be at. So they feel constantly displaced, and then they wind up involving themselves in circumstances and places they don't need to be. Originally, gangs were set up to protect us in the community against outsiders from the community. So how did the gang start preying on people in the community? This is what I'm saying. Like, these things have definite results and answers, but we don't want to go into them because they will force us to put down all of the things that we become used to. They become used to being slaves. They become used to being victims. They become used to not having no morality. They become used to denying who and what they are. They become used to thinking that hip hop, to be hip hop, you got to be ignorant. That's not what hip hop was about.
That's not hip hop. That's real. I be telling people all the time, there's too many people speaking on behalf of certain cultures that they're not a part of. It's like hip hop ain't got nothing to do with no drill and no trap music.
Nah,
hip hop is about dropping a jewel. Hip hop led me to this train of thought. You know what I'm saying? The real shit. It's like it will lead you to knowing who you are, the real.
Everything,
you know what I'm saying?
God. Like, it gave us everything. And like I said, hip hop when I was growing up was hip hop basically was like, I'm up on this and you not. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop was about, that's cool, you doing that, but I'm doing this. You dig what I'm saying? Hip hop was about, okay, that's cool, but if you say what somebody else is doing, then that's whack. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop is what destroyed the crack industry for the CIA and Reagan and all of that, because we made records about crack being whack. So what did they do? They had to start making movies about how great drug dealing was. You see what I'm saying? To then get the younger generation that didn't grow up on that came up under the NWA side of stuff, to then think that all that was cool. And because niggas took the check, we've been at the bottom of it ever since. That's why with this resurgence now of what's happening now between the so-called Nazarene in this end, which would be Kendrick, fighting the so-called Yehuda or so-called Zionists, which would be Drake in this whole fake play. This is what is resurging back in that. And you see that from that, it created unity. You see what I'm saying? Because that's the essence of what we are. We are not a tribal or a clannish people. We are an imperial people. You see what I'm saying? That have an ancient and super millennial agency that nobody can take from us, that we can only give away because we don't know. So instead of believing that we're dope, we need to know that we're dope. Instead of believing that we're better, we have to know that we're better, because when you know better, you do better. You dig? So ultimately, that's what it's about, man. We can definitely do a part 2. I'm definitely with it.
Definitely, because there's some clips. I would like to watch some highlights of conversations I've been in, and I would love to have you react to them live on the spot.
Let's do it. I would love that. I would love that. Let's do that.
I'm gonna let you go, and I'm glad you said that, because before you go, I was on a show a couple months ago, and they was like, "What's your solution?" I said, "I feel like the solution is the youth," and they were like, "What is that? How is that possible? What? That doesn't make any sense. That's not a solution. We gotta change the laws." I'm like, these people, man. So I'm glad you get my sentiments. They don't
understand what law is. They don't know the difference between a law and a rule and a statute. That's why we got to have proper education, and niggas got to start. Sometimes niggas need to drop out of school and go to the library and start reading themselves. That's what I did. Like, I got to a point where I didn't believe nothing these people gave me, because everything I started realizing was a damn lie and benefited somebody else. So once I started to give more credence to what I knew, I put myself on that path. Brothers need to stop always thinking about getting PhDs and going into these higher education and start getting trades again. Start learning how to fix cars. Start learning how to be a plumber. Start learning how to be an architect. Start learning how to get real estate. Start learning how to create aqueducts. Start learning like all of the trades. That's the stuff that allowed us to come out of the degraded state that we was in, because we are master builders by nature. But now they done made it that if you got a 9 to 5, you a square. If you're not scamming somebody, you a square. This is how low they done made people. You dig? So we got to make being smart internally and intelligence cool again. And the only way to do that is to reject their versions of what it is and start accrediting ourselves.
Exactly, because they think intelligence means graduating. It's like most of the people I'm on these panels arguing with are.
I just told you all of them
schools. Talking about.
I just told you all of them schools are military installations that were created to re-educate your forefathers away from the stuff that I'm talking to you about. So why would you then give them? They showed you this in school days. They showed you this in school days, bro. Go back and look at School Days with Spike Lee, that movie. Like, they always got a way to tell you what was going on. Like, they showed you. How you going to be so pro-black and all of that, but then you're going to be a black Greek? Like, it don't make no sense.
That's why they don't feel sorry for us, because they put everything in, and they put all their shit out. And I'm already telling people, I'm like, yo, they use these films, these animated shows as their memoirs.
Yes.
Because they got to get this shit out somehow.
Yes, because that's part of the rule. That's the rule of two. They got to give you the lie and the truth at the same time, so that way you can discern and they can never say that they tricked you. You tricked yourself by thinking that the lie that they gave you was the truth, or the truth they gave you was the lie. You got to know. You got to have the discernment. You got to know who and what you are. And it's not going to come by you going and leaving your woman. It's not going to come with your woman leaving your man to go be with another nation that don't have your best interests in mind. That's the bottom line of it. There is no gender war. There is no red pill. There is no blue pill. All of that's a movie. None of that's real. The only thing that's real is what you can taste, touch, see, and feel. That's what's real. You see what I'm saying? And if you can't discern yourself between those senses, then it means you're brainwashed, and you got to look within and start to take off that fake moniker, take off that weave, take off them eyelashes, take off the fake body parts. Stop cutting yourself open to look like a damn clone. Stop looking at all these other races of women and thinking that you're going to get something better from them. It's a damn lie, and it's a scam. You've been scammed again. The whole racial thing is a scam. There is no race. There's only one. The original people and everybody else. That's it. So until then, my brother.
All right, we will do this again, brother. I appreciate your
brother.
time. I appreciate. Definitely, bro. I appreciate it, man. This was definitely one of my favorites right here. So we definitely gonna do a part 2. We're gonna stay. I appreciate you, bro. Peace.
Let's do it, more. Peace, and thanks for posting the links, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, bro. No problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, brother. Peace, everybody. Peace. Thank y'all for showing up. As you can see, I'm trying to keep the conversation elevating. A lot of people that was asking for this show say, "Oh, when you do this show, let me know. I'm gonna ask questions." I don't see it. So I show and prove. When I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. When y'all want, if you want, that's why I'm gonna do a part 2, because y'all need to see what's up. Y'all want to ask questions. You need to be challenged. Everything these people talking about in these spaces, they do not know what they talking about. They do not have the answers for you. These people want subscriptions and subscribers, and we all do. But that's not my bottom line. I want to give my people the truth. I want to give them information that they're not privy to getting. Make them look at life in a whole new way. Who's making us look at things differently? It's not a competition, because it's not about the people. It's about the information. So you got to ask yourself, when the last time somebody in this space made you look at things in a different way, made you look at things in a solution-based way, and not just regurgitating your pain and regurgitating the same sentiments, arguing and back and forth. Like, we got to get past that. We got to leave something for the future. We already know what's here, but the information we give out got to be for the future, for our young people, young men, young women. They need something. They can't eat off. This gender war conversation can't do nothing for the youth. It can do nothing for them moving forward. Look at the young men that's a part of this, that's swallowed the red pill. Look at the young women that's took in the sisterhood snapped. Look at how they think. Look at how they talk. This conversation is not making better young men and young women. It's making them reclusive. It's making them antisocial. It's making them superficial. And it's making them not want to bond what they own. This conversation that's ran its course. So if you are really about change, you're really about real solution, real conversation, real dialogue, and we're going to react and we're going to do all of that, but we're going to react from a certain perspective that's going this way. So if that's what you're about, support the channel, because you know me, I ain't all about the money, but People was donating. We was talking about this one. They was donating when reacting to this. So donate on shows like this. Show love to the brother that spoke. You know what I'm saying? This brother done spoke in college halls and he done lectured in front of all types of people. So I'm not just bringing. Do your homework on these people. The people I bring on these panels, do your homework on them. Don't just take my word for it. Do your research. Look up these people. Listen to what they talk about. Free your mind. You got to ask yourself, if you're not being challenged to think differently, they're just feeding you and perpetuating emotional trauma to you. Illa ain't trying to do that. You feel me? And I've been like this. I knew this brother before this show. So I'm just using my platform to give people I admire a platform because I'm not all about myself. I'm trying to bring conversation that inspired me growing up. And I want to bring the people that inspired me growing up and hopefully they inspire you. I've been listening to Aseer since I was in my early 20s. I'm 40 years old. It's the first time we was able to, we met, when we talked on the phone, but it's the first time we was able to, you know, talk in this manner. Just like I had Red Pill, just like I had other people. Like these are people that helped me come to a lot of conclusions in life and look at things on another level. And I want to share that with y'all. So yes, there's a lot of go back and watch the replay. There's a lot of books that was mentioned because we could talk all day, but if you don't do the homework yourself, it don't matter. So there's a lot of scholarships dropped today. There's a lot of authors dropped today. There's a lot of things you can Google and look up. So shout out to everybody that popped up, everybody that pulled up. Check the replay, write those books down, do the knowledge. Don't take stuff in for face value from nobody, not even me. You know what I'm saying? And don't look at what these other people talking about. Look at what the shows they putting together. Ask yourself, what is it about? Is it about solutions or is it just about frivolous conversation with people who really ain't trying to listen nowhere and just to try to capture a moment? I'm not trying to do that. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to really have some dope conversations with dope people. We're gonna have fun too. But we're gonna think. You know what I'm saying? We got to move away from the toxicity. I know it's entertaining, but it be real people emotions in it. Like I'm not like this other people. Like I mean what I say. So when I associate with people, because I got love for them. When I cut them off, because I'm not messing with them no more. I'm not fake. I'm not doing nothing for no likes. I'm not doing nothing to look like I'm cool and none of that shit. Because I know who I am in real life. It's about unlocking who you are. A lot of people don't know who they are. A lot of people that are content creators trying to become people. And there's people out here that's making content. I'm a person. I'm a human being making content. I'm a Moor making content. I'm not a content creator trying to find their way and try to become somebody through the content. There's a difference. Know the difference. Know who's in front of you. Know who these people talking, who they talking about, or what they talking about, what trains of thought they coming from. Y'all got to do your homework on these organizations, these groups. Everybody ain't your brother like you think. You know what I'm saying? Everybody just want to perpetuate the same thinking because when you change the shift the paradigm, new values rise, new heroes arise. What you thought was good becomes bad. What you thought was bad becomes good. Things get shifted around and people don't like that shit because they benefit from y'all ignorance. I'm not trying to do that. So appreciate everybody that pulled up. Shout out to all my moderators. And check the replay. There was a lot of Jews dropped that like I said, we're gonna do a part 2 with the brother, but I'm gonna definitely do a part 2 of this particular topic with another historian next week. We're gonna follow up with what Aseer was talking about from a different perspective as well, but we're gonna stick with the Moorish information and yeah, we're gonna keep bringing, you know, just fresh topics for you guys, man. We just trying to keep it innovative, keep it new. We're definitely not trying to go back. So yeah, I hope y'all have a good night. I'm glad we was able to get it and keep it pushing because I'm definitely not trying to be out here all night. I appreciate all the love, all the supporters. Get the Cash App, support the brother, support me, and support yourself. You know, knowledge is power, man. Replay this tape, get those books, educate yourself. Peace and love.
Them niggas shrink around you, man. You know what I'm saying? They just in the space probably before you was a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But them niggas shrink when you come around. That's why them niggas don't want you around.
Situation with agendas and all of that shit that we've been hearing about. And there's nobody better than the Gore. Philosophical to come set that bitch off.
Yo, you know